So this is a 1,000-piece buffalo puzzle. I think it's called Donuts Delight or something similar to that. I actually just found it in the laundry room and decided to try doing it. So a couple of issues with that is one, I did not really measure my space before I started, which you'll see in a little bit. And also, it was a little trickier than I thought. So when I looked at the box, I initially thought it was going to be fairly straightforward, that there should be a lot of chunks that I would be able to find. That turned out not to be quite as much of the case as will probably become slightly obvious. So I started by trying to look for individual color chunks rather than during the border. A couple reasons for that. One, didn't know how much space I was going to be working with on my table. And two, it's a pretty busy puzzle, as you'll see. And so there are lots of donuts. Each donut definitely has an individual shape, but actually, like finding all the pieces that made up a donut, I found trickier than I expected. So what I tried to do was start with some of the more obvious donuts, and not very successfully. So you can see the yellow donut that is it? I don't know if it's technically a donut. And then there's a coffee cup as well, that's that sort of pink and blue that I'm also trying to build. So yeah, continuing here to try to find chunks to build. That was actually the toughest part of this, was not knowing which chunks to actually be able to spot. I think this is a puzzle that would have been a lot faster for me on a second run. I didn't really enjoy it, so I never actually did a second run. Honest answer. So yeah, you can see I'm really struggling. Now, what I probably should have done here is pulled those green pieces on the upper right, sort of pulled those in and built those, rather than continuing this sort of random build that I'm doing. One of the problems that I have is I'm not very good at focusing on specific sections. I like to jump and feel like I'm building, which in competition actually slows me down quite a bit. So you can kind of see me doing that here. I'm not really sticking with an individual section to build, and it would have been more effective had I just said, like, just go build those green bits or build those yellow bits. The other challenge I'm having is you can see there's just a ton of pieces on the side. I didn't really have enough space for this puzzle, and so it's not all neatly flipped and sortable. It's all kind of just in this pile. I'm also now working with a little bit of glare because I've had to turn on my overhead lighting. But finally, the top edge is starting to come together a little bit. I've been able to find that coffee cup at the top. Now I'm 90 minutes into this puzzle, and you can tell that like it's not very far along. This was pretty early in my speed puzzling days, so this is definitely slower than I would do it if I redid it now. And it's actually really interesting for me to watch because I can see strategically I'm kind of a mess here. And so, I should be yanking those green pieces and building that. I should be just reducing the total number of pieces I've got on the table. But instead, I'm just sort of jumping around to like, oh, I think I see something here. And like, you can see on the bottom line, I've even got the start of this green eclair. So I could just actually finish that green eclair, get those pieces out of the way. They're somewhat sorted, and then move on. But I'm instead sort of doing this like jumping around, some border, some random, and some random piece hunting. I'm also resting my left hand on the table. And so one of the things that I have worked on as I've tried to get faster is actually using both hands. So I can't use both hands to place pieces very effectively until I'm at like the very, very end of a puzzle. But I use the left hand often to hold pieces or to guide pieces. So I'll like hold the 5 pieces that I'm working on in my left hand and then build with my right. And it's kind of a way for me to tell how fast I'm going is it's like almost perfectly correlated when I go back and I watch videos of myself doing puzzles. If I'm using my left hand, I'm going fast, I'm in competition, I'm focused and locked in. If my left hand is just kind of flopped on the table, I'm not. And so, that's sort of an interesting thing I've noticed as I've started to get faster at speed puzzling. So I'm still going with this sort of hunt and peck strategy. So it's really not very efficient. I really should be pulling pieces and then building them. instead what I'm doing is just kind of like grabbing a couple pieces, trying to fit them in. So I'm finally getting to this green donut where I've had the pieces sorted for the last hour and a half. I've now fortunately shifted a little bit, and so the puzzle is now, I'm doing it now in natural light, so there's much, much less glare on the table, which is quite helpful. This was a puzzle where I don't tend to like buffalo puzzles as much. For some reason, the piece feel just isn't quite what I love. And so it helps me to have kind of good lighting where I'm better able to see the patterns, because I don't love the like grab test strategy on this one. So now I'm finally starting to get some shape in this puzzle. took me long enough. So you can see the box with the donuts is starting to come together. And there's starting to be a few individual donuts that I'm placing. So there's this white one with the brown swirl. There are a couple of green ones. In retrospect, why I didn't try to build some of the more obvious ones sooner is beyond me. Like, I'm 3 hours into this puzzle. One of the challenges is there's a lot of these brown ones. I think they're like donuts with crackle on them. And the challenge is it's actually really hard to see all of the different brown donuts. But that being said, there are some pretty distinct donuts that you're sort of starting to see come together. This one in the bottom left with the sprinkles on it, as an example, would have been a good donut probably to pull sooner and build. Similarly, all the greens, there were 3 green donuts, could have pulled those and built them. The cups at the top, I did build fairly early, but could have built sooner. The It's Coffee O'Clock in the bottom right, again, there's wording on it. It should be fairly easy to spot, even though the color there is less distinctive. And you can see here strategically, again, sort of my big issue here is that I'm grabbing random pieces and trying them in the puzzle, whereas I'm still at a point in this puzzle where I should be able to really look for individual color blocks, right? There's still that brown donut. I should be able to pull the brown pieces and build them. There's a partially finished green donut. There should be green pieces I can pull. You know, I think strategy is one of those things you almost just have to try it and mess it up a bunch of times, and then you figure out what works and what doesn't work. And this is part of my messing it up. This is the messing it up section. So here I'm just really starting to fill in the remaining pieces. Again, they're actually fairly distinctive by color. And so, really could have done a better job just sorting them by color. But, you live and you learn. So here we go, just finishing in those last 3 little sections. So now it's just really grabbing and testing pieces. And pieces are on top of the puzzle because I'm a little space constrained on this one. There we are.